Hello and welcome back to the jewelry box build. In this video we're going to be talking about the dividers that rest under the tray. These dividers and the escutcheon. Escutcheon's made out of wood and we get to use the lathe to turn that, but the first step is to trim the divider to length and go over to the table saw. The divider stock is made out of 1/4 inch thick material. It's about an inch tall, and we're going to cut the pieces to length, and then because it's 1/4 inch thick, we'll be cutting the notches with a 1/4 inch dado stack. And right now we are going to cut 4 long pieces, and then we'll reset up to cut the shorter pieces. I'm making 2 cherry boxes, so that's why I'm making this number of The next step is to set up the dado set. The first step in changing over to the dado set is to take out the regular 1/8 inch blade. This is a Delta Unisaw. So you take this nut off the arbor, there's the nut, it has a big washer that goes with it. Take off this blade, and then this is a dado set that I bought years ago, and it works really well. It's made by FS Tool. There's no sponsorship or anything. And it's important that the teeth of the blades, we'll only be using 2 blades, but they come with more. But you can see the teeth in this blade, if you can, how they point. Some of the teeth have an angle that points to one side. That points to the outside of the cut. And then the teeth on this side point another way over to the left, and that goes on this side. The carbide is very brittle, so you don't let the carbide pieces touch each other. You offset them. Put the washer back on, put the nut back on, and then there's a special throat insert that I use. It has the 1/4 inch dado blade on it, and that goes here. The height of the cut is just a little bit more, maybe a 64th more than the height of the pieces. So they're about 1 inch. So these will be just over 1/2 inch. Got some scrap pieces here, and we're going to set these first cuts at just over a 64th over the thickness. This stop is too short, I can't get a clamp on it, so I'm going with this stop. Set it there. Put this here. And so I'll be cutting the long pieces are going to have the tops notched on the ends, but the bottoms notched for the dividers. And so all 4 of these will start out in this orientation for the end cuts. For the front to back dividers, 4 of them will be notched on the bottom, and the others will be notched on the top. Now the short dividers are all done. I've got the ones for the ends, and these are in the middle. And the long dividers, I'll use the dividers and the masking tape to lay out the intermediary notches. So here are the long dividers with the layout points. It works out that the spacing is very close to 2 9/16. And so I'm going to transfer those lines down to the bottom where the notch will be running from the bottom up the 1/2 inch. And the difference between these dividers and the tray is that they're cut snug. Unlike the tray that needed to be lifted in and out, these will be in there all the time. And so I am going to reposition the stop. And I'll make these two cuts and then one more setup and make the second cuts. How those turn out. And now we'll go back over to the table and do the assembly. Here's the box, and what I do is position the lower dividers in first, and then I put the back one in. It's hard to do this without getting in the way of the camera, but and then I put the front one in. And then the end ones go over the top, and they get glued in. So that should show the way the dividers go. In the assembly at the end, I put velvet, and I'll show how to cut that and fit the velvet before we put the dividers in after the box has been varnished. But the next step is to talk about the escutcheon. On the maple box, I went with a rosewood escutcheon. We can get a good light on that. And we'll be doing the same with these. The boxes, when they were made, have a hole drilled that aligns with the keyhole in the lock. That has to be covered usually with something that's harder than the native wood. So I've been making these escutcheons. They are usually made out of rosewood, but I may be making some out of either ebony or bird's eye maple. But the way to do it very quickly, here is a sample of how it's done. I cut a 3/8 inch diameter tenon on a piece of wood that's just over a 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch. This gets fitted into the lathe. The piece that's in front gets turned into a cylinder, then rounded over. I drilled the hole for the key, and then I cut a tenon that's the same diameter as the hole in the box. So it sounds complex, but it really goes fairly quickly. I'd like to do it with some nice wood, so I have these little pieces of leftover rosewood, and that's what we're going to be making them out of. So I'm going to get this set up in the mortiser and show you how I cut the tenon. We're at the mortiser. This is a tenon cutting bit. This is the piece of rosewood. This is a piece on top to apply pressure from the clamp. And I've got, these are Yorgies clamping it side to side. And then this clamp is pushing down. I'm going to turn this on. The depth of cut going into the block is about 7/16 of an inch. And that, if I can get closer, is the tenon. And we'll go from here to the lathe and do the rest. I'm going to make a quick stop at the table saw just to cut this to length so I don't have to part it off in the lathe, because it puts some force on the chuck. So what is left is a little piece of wood that's about a 1/2 inch square with a 3/8 10-inch tenon on it. The part of the piece is still a 1/2 inch square, is a 1/2 inch long. This is my lathe. It's a vintage Delta. I've had it for a long time. I've added a DC motor to it with infinite variable speed motor control, and this is where we'll be setting up for this next piece. The chuck is a Nova chuck, G3 Nova chuck, and I made some Baltic birch jaws. That's what this is, that fit inside the jaws. This is a little sample escutcheon that I'm going to use to show drilling the hole. It's already been turned to a cylinder and rounded over. Now we're going to drill the hole, cut the tenon, and it'll be done. But I wanted to do it on this piece first before I do it on the rosewood. Okay, I've added some light, and I want to show the tailstock with the drill that drills the keyhole. And I slide that up. I don't do the drilling by sliding it on the ways. I do it by cranking the tailstock. But I turn the lathe on, go to slow speed, and drill this through. That's about it. The last step is to cut the tenon. I have a caliper set for the diameter of the hole, which is about 5/16, and I'm really close. So I'm just going to dial it in. That, I think, is right there. just to shave the shoulder a little bit. Quick. And then just a quick wipe with some 220 grit. And then 320. $400. The tenon needs to go into the box about 1/4 inch, a little bit less. So I'm going to get a handsaw and part it off with a saw and not use the lathe. Sorry, that's about 1/8 inch. And I'm going to get a line. Probably can't see any of that, but that's what it is. The tenon looks like that. And now we'll try it with the rosewood. I'm going to try and back it out a little bit to see if I've got enough room to make a tenon and still keep the front to back. The tenon on the rosewood is 3/8, and the diameter of the hole is 5/16. So I should be able to save it. A little tight, but I'm going to leave it. See how it looks. And let's go see if it fits the box. So here's the box, and I'm going to set this vertically. This is the escutcheon. It's a little bit less than a 1/2 inch side to side, and the part that sticks out is about 3/16 of an inch, and the tenon's about 1/8 of an inch long. And I'm going to align it there and then just give it a push so you can see. I'm going to slide this out. If it focuses. It's a kind of a snap fit, and then the finish goes on before the escutcheon is installed. So I finish all of the boxes, get everything polished, and then the very last thing is to put in the escutcheon and the velvet as part of the final assembly. It's getting close to the end. We still have to do the handles on some of the boxes. Then we'll talk about finishing, sanding, polishing, finishing the assembly, and then packing, shipping, marketing, and bookkeeping. Thank you. But before I go, just want to say I'm David Klenk. Thank you for watching my video.